Hello and welcome to this round 10 here at Grand Prix Turin. We've got Loic Le Briand on the left of our screen. He is on blue wide approach up against Robin Dolar, Robbie Dollars on, well, a bit of an old favorite for him, blue black control.
Yeah, Loic Le Briand is not on blue wide approach. He's on mono red. Remember there was the GP in Birmingham a few weeks ago? I think he was playing mono red in modern, so it should come as no surprise that he's running Raminab red in this tournament. And Robin Dollar, when I saw him on Friday afternoon, I approached him and I looked at him and was like, Robin, you're playing blue control, aren't you? He's like, yeah, so. And he actually came with a blue-black version that he felt pretty confident in. I don't think Raminab red is a good matchup in general, but I also think that he came prepared. That I think he's going to have some sideboard cards that are going to be good in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Raminab Red, if you're watching the Pro Tour, by the end of the Pro Tour, it's pretty clear that that was one of the decks that you had to have some kind of a plan for. We see here a Sensor on a turn 2 Karizev. But meanwhile, Falconwrath Gorger coming in for 2 each turn there. So this, I guess, is the problem for the blue-black control deck, is what happens in these very early turns, because this is where the red deck can put on a big hurt. If it can get Robin Dolar down to 10 life, single digits, you know, start to reach the point where it can throw around Raminab Ruins to get the final points in, that could be a big problem for Robin Dolar.
And another important thing to note is that Robin actually won the die roll, which is very important if you want to have any chance of winning game 1. I think when you're on the draw, there's almost no chance, unless the red deck mulligans to 5 and doesn't really present anything. But Robin is here getting the value out of Sensor, and now being able to maybe play a Supreme Will. He also has a Grasp of Darkness. He has some options to actually fight this.
Earthshaker Kenra coming down from Loic Le Briand, and it's getting hit by Supreme Will, so a 3-mana spell to deal with a 2-mana spell, leaving 1 mana left for Loic Le Briand to play that Bomat Courier and still get stuck in for a little bit of extra damage. But as things stand, Robin Dolar, it could have been a lot worse for him in these early turns.
Oh yeah, definitely. And he's setting up well, but Loic still, these really cheap creatures, you can see how effective they are at just chipping it in and the first few damage, and already Raminab Ruins in play that can threaten the long game for Loic Le Briand. So both players set up somewhat, and I'm curious to see how the following turns go. Ooh, look at that. Robin Dolar has a Flaying Tendrils. That's usually just a one-off in these decks, but great here.
Gets to exile all of the creatures that Loic Le Briand has going on. They were all small enough that they were going to die to that Flaying Tendrils. And I guess that's where Robin Dolar's deck is going to win, if it wins this game 1, is by being able to leverage cards that can deal with multiple threats. Uncop Crasher coming in there, the haste, a bit of a problem for blue-black control if it's having to tap out for sorcery speed removal.
No 5th land here for Robin, who I think he has a Scarab God in his hand. But that's one of the problems in this particular matchup, is that the Scarab God is not that great. Look, Uncrop Crasher can just make it not block. You don't have to kill it, you just make it not usable. So that's why Robin is probably going to go for at least a Grasp. He also has a Fatal Push in his hand. He definitely needs to get the Uncrop Crasher off the table if he wants to have an effective blocker into the Scarab God.
Yeah, Fatal Push on the Earthshaker Kenra as well. Of course, one of the slight concerns is that Earthshaker Kenra can come back as a 4/4 at some point at a later date. Again, a draw and a pass for Robin Dolar. That's not what he wants. And a shock to the head. Loic Le Briand correctly sniffing out that his shock's probably not going to have too many targets in the way of creatures, but there's always going to be Robbie Dollars as a target up top.
Yeah, one reminder about what we talked about with Martin Yuza yesterday is like him saying like, why aren't more people playing mono red? It's such a good deck. It's so straightforward. And here is another reason why it is good. It has a really good late game. The Earthshaker Kenra, you can eternalize them for 6 mana. And you can then start chucking your lands at your opponent's face turn by turn with Sunscorched Desert, Raminab Ruins, and Scavenger Ground sometimes also being an inclusion in these sorts of decks.
Yeah, Robin on 7, but it's a virtual 3, really, because at some point those deserts going to get thrown in his face, and that damage that he's not going to be able to stop with counter magic. Likewise, Earthshaker Kenra in the graveyard, at some point Loic Le Briand's going to get up to 6 mana, and then the Eternalize ability, you're not casting a spell, you're using an ability, that meaning that, again, some of the counter magic that previous control decks might have been hoping to employ to stop creatures won't be quite as effective here.
Definitely. And now he's in a tough spot as well. He Supreme willed. He's probably digging for a land. Only found a tapped one, and he desperately needs an untapped one. So he took a sensor that he's going to cycle here, just to give himself more shots at drawing untapped Swords of Mana in one of his 2 following draw steps. Yeah, there it is, Sunken Hollow.
There is a Torrential Gearhulk in hand for a win dollar, so he does have the potential to pull things back, but there's a lot of work to be done if that's going to work out.
So there's the Scarab God, one of the most talked about cards this weekend in general.
Yeah, it's a card that we've seen cropping up in some of the Team Air Energy lists. They've stretched their mana just a little bit more, but Arncrop Crasher was the draw for Loic Lebrion, and this one, a big deal. Attack obviously going to exert here, making sure that the one creature that Robin Dolar has is unable to block, and that means that Dolar down to 2, and 2 is virtual death here with Ramanat Ruins in play.
That was a fantastic draw. As I said in a couple of turns before, Robin really needed to kill that Arncrop Crasher because it makes his Scarab God look that much worse, and now I don't think it's going to matter. If Robin had the Essence Extraction in his graveyard that he could flash back with Torrential Gearhulk, he'd be in an okay shape, but Ramanat Ruins lurking, Robin, I think, has no way out here.
Yeah, this is one of those matchups that Robin Dolar knew he had the potential to be facing a fair amount in this standard, but he was kind of hoping, I would guess, when he chose to play Blue-Black Control, that he was going to see more of the decks looking to beat Ramanat Red and potentially make it less of this Day 2 metagame, because he ought to be pretty good against many of those decks that are kind of one level up from the red deck. So a little bit more cycling going on here. Robin Dolar now hitting his lands, but I think it may be too little too late here.
Yeah. I mean, he can start reanimating some creatures, but it's not going to matter if there's 2 damage on the board coming from a land.
Yeah, reminiscent of the sort of the days of Barbarian Ring, maybe, where you had red decks that little bit of extra last reach, in some respects, is the most frustrating for opponents, because that's the damage that you can just see on the table, but you can just do nothing about. Disallow pretty much the only way that you were going to get around Ramanat Ruins damage, and that really doesn't add up too neatly in the long term. That a relatively straightforward game 1 for Loic Lebrion. Robin Dolar missing a land drop here and there, and we've said it all weekend, these red decks very good at punishing even the slightest stumble.
Definitely, and you can see there, Robin Dolar skipped his 5th land drop for 2 turns in a row, and that basically won Loic Lebrion the game, because if Robin had been able to develop the Scarab God earlier, he would have easily made a big enough army with the Scarab God to not have to worry about the Arncrop Crasher coming off the top for Loic. So let's have a look at the sideboards.
All right, so let's kick things off with Loic Lebrion. In some respects, his deck's all threats, so he doesn't necessarily have to, if he doesn't want to, make too many changes here. He may decide that he wants to make a few spot adjustments in terms of how much removal he has in there. At the moment, he's got 4 Braids, 4 Shocks, 2 Incendiary Flow. If he knows that there aren't quite so many targets, then he may be looking for more efficient damage sources. Yep. Glory Bringers in the long run do represent more damage, even if they're a little bit more removable. But I think that for him, it's very much going to be kind of seasoning on his meal rather than changing the entire course.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But I think like some of the Burn Sparrows are definitely going to go out. At least the Braids are quite pointless here. And Shock is very low impact too. Incendiary Flow at least deals 3 to the face, so that I see some point in this. On the other hand, as we talked about yesterday, Loic has to also account for the fact that Robin Dolar is going to bring in cards. And one of the most common cards is Gifted Etherborn. So he might be priced into keeping a Braid, which ultimately actually is not the worst, because it deals with the Gifted Etherborn, and also it kills the Torrential Gearhulk because it's an artifact. So it's still somewhat versatile. But I assume that he's going to take out at least 1 or 2 Braids and a couple of Shocks and bring in the Chandras, possibly the Glorybringer, maybe PNLR if he wants a creature that's a bit more resistant to removal. In place of maybe some of the smaller creatures. So I can see that working well. On the other side, Robin Dolar does actually have the Gifted Etherborn that you've just seen on camera. He also has 3 Kalitas, Traitor of Get, Lifelink being very important there. And he just has more removal. Also, Dispel is a card I think that we're going to see possibly to protect some of his creatures. Maybe even negate. but it's still going to be quite hard for him to find the optimal configuration. Poured out quite a few counter spells that are just not that great here, especially something like Disallow or Supreme Will is just very slow.
Lovely stuff. The players just finishing their shuffling up, and while they're doing so, we're going to take a quick look at the standings as of the end of yesterday. So 9 rounds of standard, and we can see 4 players that made it undefeated at the start of today. So we've got Alain Bardini from France, Bart van Etten of the Netherlands, and then a pair of Italians, Andreas Sonzogni and Alessandro Ariste. Behind them, though, a whole host of talent. We can see, I mean, as we move across to this second page, when we're looking at the 8 and 1s, it goes all the way down to 30th place. Robin Dolar, you can see in there. And we've got a number of other very sort of talented 8 and 1s. Martin User ended up dropping to 7 and 2, so in the race, but a little bit of work to do on day 2. You can see him down there in 40th place. And as we just dip across a little bit deeper, we go to our next slide and we can see Simon Nielsen. If you're Simon Nielsen fans, he is still going. Lucas Blohon, who's on a similar white Eldrazi deck to the deck that we've seen on the other side of the Atlantic in the hands of Corey Baumaster. Not quite got the same level of success, but at X and 2, very much alive, the potential to do big things there. George Channing from Great Britain also still in the hunt. We like to see a little bit of that, but generally speaking, not too many big surprises in this standard format. It's really people making spot adjustments and trying to get a feel for what level the metagame is at right now.
Yeah, if there's one thing I definitely want to point out is that technically we have 5 undefeated players because there was Tim Kohler of Germany who was at 7 wins and 2 draws. Not the best record though. Getting 2 draws already, it feels like 2 losses in this regard. So,
though this is an interesting format. People sometimes talk about the Swiss Gambit. So the way that Swiss pairings work in tournaments is that where possible, there's an effort made to try and pair you with people on the same record as you, that you've not already played. Now, if you picked up a draw in round 4, you're now basically in what we call the draw bracket. That meaning that you are going to play against more other decks that have received draws, and that could end up meaning that if you've got a deck that is particularly good against control, say, or good against decks that are naturally a little bit slower, then maybe picking up a draw early isn't necessarily so bad a thing if you can just beat all of the other decks in the draw bracket for a bunch of time. Personally, I think I'd rather just have the 2 extra points.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's something that periodically gets talked about.
Yeah, I had this experience a couple of years ago back at a Grand Prix where a player was doing pretty well, but then he played a friend, and they decided to draw because they were both on a very aggressive red deck, and they just thought, all right, we're going to get into draw bracket, we're going to beat all the slow decks, and it didn't turn out that well. I think I played both of the guys with the draw, and my deck was pretty well set up against the red deck, and I just lost. I just drew it with a blue control deck. It wasn't my fault. And
these things happen.
You cannot rely on just playing the matchup you want to play against round after round. Just because there's going to be a variety of decks anyway.
All right, so these players, they're going to be going on to the post-board configuration. Robin Dolar is going to be on the play once more, this time presumably hoping to achieve step 1 for any control deck, which is hit your land drops for probably the first 5 or 6 turns, really. Any moment that you can't cast your higher mana spells, effectively, suddenly one of your key advantages against one of these low-to-the-ground decks like Red is taken away from you.
It looks like Robin has some good cards, but I don't think he has the right lands. He had Gifted Etherborn in his hand and Fatal Push, but he only had an island to work with, and you just cannot keep those hands. And this is also part of the problem. Your mana requirements are pretty harsh after sideboard, where you really need double black very early because of the Gifted Etherborn, also Flaying Tendrils, but you also need at least 1 blue, and starting with turn 3 or 4, you also went double blue. So if you don't start off with a Sunken Hollow or Fetid Pools or Choked Estuary, you might be in rough shape.
Yeah, it's amazing how when you're thinking about decks in terms of their mana requirements, it's not just down to how many colors are you, it's how deep do you need to go to get the number of instances of particular color. So sort of you will see some of the energy decks that are 3 or 4 colors, and it feels like their mana is a dream. and then you'll see a 2-color deck that's having little mana issues, and it's just a matter of, if you need double black, that's actually more fiddly than hitting 2 different colors a lot of the time.
Or sometimes 3. I remember seeing Mark Tobias yesterday in round 4 or 5, where he was playing a 4-color deck, but both times on turn 3 he had 4 colors of mana, just because he had stuff like Traverse the Ovenwald and a bunch of dual lands, and it just worked out very nicely for him, even evolving Wilds helping quite a bit there.
All right, so Dolar now down to 6. He's got islands, but he's not really got anything else going on, and that's a handful of black spells.
This is really fiddly. I mean, it's barely keepable because he does have a Fatal Push. I see Scarab God and Kalitas, but he needs like 2 black sources from the top of his deck. Yeah, he mulligans again. And I think this was a very brave mulligan, because I think a lot of people would have kept and saying, oh, I'll scry and I'll get a land. But remember, Robin Dollar is on the play, so like the chances of him drawing consecutive lands are not that high. And even though he did have the Fatal Push, without 2 black sources, he wouldn't be able to play the Grasp or play the Kalitas. So, yeah.
I've seen some interesting conversations recently on various social media about how mulligans work and the sort of the psychology behind them. That there are some people that every time they take a mulligan, they kind of feel like, oh no, I'm so unlucky, I have to take a mulligan. And there's been talk of maybe reframing that a little bit and thinking, wow, I've got a bad hand, but at least I have the privilege of being able to mulligan it. And I think that that's actually a really interesting sort of head fake that you can do for yourself, that sort of, when you think about it in those terms of, oh, I've got a bad hand, but I've got a second chance at making it better.
Yeah.
Suddenly it means that mulligans don't feel so bad. And I think that in general it's safe to say, especially with the Vancouver mulligan rule where you get the scry, that getting yourself in a headspace where you're not afraid to take a mulligan is generally helpful for people's game.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, to latch onto that, one thing I frequently see where people tend to not mulligan when they're on 5 cards, saying, oh, I can't possibly have a better 4-card hand. Yes, you can. you have 1 land in your 5-card hand. Of course, you can get a better 4-card hand if it has at least 2 lands. You can maybe play some spells here or there.
And this 5-card hand actually looks pretty decent for Robin Dollar. He's got land. I think I saw a Flaying Tendrils in the hand also, and that means that he's got enough going on that he's going to be able to get something going here. Obviously, he still is going to need a bit of help. He started down 2 cards against a relatively aggressive deck that can punish even the slightest stumble, but he's hitting his land drops here. He's going to be able to get something going. Falconwrath Gorger on turn 1 from Lurk Leprion. It will be getting in for some damage, and joined by an Earthshaker Kenra here, so Dolar already on 16 going into his turn 3. But he may be able to pull this one back, because the card advantage he's going to get just off Flaying Tendrils is enough that he may find that he gets out of this mulligan fairly quickly.
Yeah, and the Flaying Tendrils is going to be really good here. Too bad the rest of his hand is a little bit slow. I see a Gearhulk and a Scarab God, so very, very expensive cards. But the Flaying Tendrils should give him at least some time to draw either into more lands or some card draw or creature removal. And another good thing about Flaying Tendrils, they're actually exile, so the Earthshaker Kenra is not going to threaten to come back later in the game.
Even if there was a temptation to wait an extra turn and catch an extra creature with that Flaying Tendrils, Robin Dolar knew that he couldn't really afford to take that much more damage. Worked out very well for him, because just carry Zev the follow-up here, and that would not have died to a Flaying Tendrils anyway.
Yeah, and a Grasp of Darkness off the top from Robin. Another good way to deal with it. Loic just he can threaten a bunch more cards. Something like Hazoret is still a problem for the blue-black decks to be dealt with sometimes. Ooh, another Earthshaker Kenra. Now Robin's like, wait. Let me take care of the Karizev. Yeah,
we do not want Ragavan coming in, so pre-combat Karizev getting killed off there.
Yeah, if Robin can actually draw a untapped land here, he can play the Scarab God, which would be really good on this board. Just another Grasp of Darkness. Wow.
Now, I believe that there is actually a copy of Hazoret in hand for Lurk Leprion.
There is. Just 2 lands and a Hazoret. I think this is a very interesting spot where you really price into playing the Hazoret and trying to put on the screw, but on the other hand, you kind of want Robin to react to the creatures on the board, because Loic can swing in for 5, and that's a hefty chunk of damage. He doesn't really have to play the Hazoret here into counter magic. He could even if if Loic attacks here and Robin kills a creature, then Loic can maybe play a Hazoret to make sure that it resolves or that it doesn't eat a Grasp of Darkness right away. But he goes for it before combat. I think Robin has a target for his Grasp.
I think so. It's one of those cards that, as much as Hazoret the Fervent, pretty much the Mirror Breaker, very, very difficult for red decks to deal with. For this blue-black control deck, there are a reasonable number of ways of taking the god off the battlefield in spite of that indestructibility. -4/-4, good enough. As it stands, though, I don't think that Loic Le Brion's going to mind too much. He got a fair amount of damage in just with his other attackers.
There we go. There we go.
All right.
Scarab God, baby.
Body
Let's
on the
go.
board. And the Scarab God
Got a game.
could be putting into play Hazoret at some point, because Robin Dolar, after all those mulligans, not very many cards in hand.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, Bowmat Courier. I like it. Loic Le Brion plays the Bowmat Courier, then picks up the Scarab God. All right, so what does this do? I've played all my stuff out. And yeah, Robin's going to be nice. He also won't mind if he draws another land, because he his Torrential Gearhulk, with which he can flashback a Grasp of Darkness. Which would be another nice 2-for-1 for him there. And at this point, he just has to, Robin has to try to stay at his at a high enough life total, or as high of a life total as possible.
Yeah, number one priority is just make it through the next turn or so.
Yeah, but now tough choices, because blocking the Bowmat Courier, it just prevents Loic from getting more than one card from it eventually. Robin doesn't want Loic to draw more cards. On the other side, he has to just protect his life total as much as he can.
Yeah, when he looks at these attackers, blocking Ragavan, not that exciting because you're not really impacting Loic's Broad. Blocking the Earthshaker Kenra, not that exciting because it can eternalize.
Yeah.
Can't block Kari Zev, so Bowmat Courier, kind of the interesting block, but it's one of the one-power creatures on the battlefield, and Loic Le Brion is going to have to just get a tiny amount more damage through in subsequent turns if he's going to turn this game, or like just turn the lights out on Robin Dolar.
Yeah, tough choices. I mean, the Bowmat Courier was a decent draw here, just giving Robin Dolar a big headache here. He's trying to snatch this. Remember, Robin Dolar mulliganed to 5 in this game, and he's still someone holding on.
I mean, I guess that there maybe is an argument for blocking the Earthshaker Kenra, because you get to untap and put the Kenra in play for yourself before Loic Le Brion does. And that gives you an insurance policy if you didn't draw your 6th land for the Torrential Gearhulk.
And also, let's not forget, there's also the Scavenger Grounds in play too. Potentially relevant if Robin Dolar wants to rely on the Torrential Gearhulk for Grasp of Darkness. So,
also a way that Loic Le Brion can effectively counter the ability of the Scarab God if he chooses.
Exactly. So definitely there's a bunch of back and forth potential going from both sides.
Yeah, this is not just Robin Dolar deciding which creature he wants to block and kill here. It's him deciding what he wants to happen over the next number of turns.
Yeah, exactly. And he goes for the Bowmat Courier. Doesn't want Loic to get any card advantage, so Loic just going to sacrifice that. No. What are you doing,
Problems.
Loic?
We've got them.
No. You have to pick up the card you have underneath the Bowmat Courier, not draw an extra card. And I think he called the judge on himself immediately. Yeah, and Robin's like, oh, what are you... Oh, all right, so...
Yeah, this is one of those situations that's a little bit awkward, but I think Loic just explaining to the judges what has happened here. We'll find out what happens soon enough.
He's like, I woke up really late. I'm still sleepy. I didn't realize.
A bit of Sunday morning magic going on here. The judges will figure out what the best resolution to this little issue is.
All right, I'm glad the Twitch chat got something to wake up to. Chat's going wild. Yeah, they revealed the card off the top. I'll be honest, I'm not sure what the procedure is. Okay, it's just going to be a shuffle of the library there. So Loic revealed the card to Robin, and he's. I don't think it had any impact really. like which card was on top or not. So just shuffling the library makes sure it's a bit random. Of course, like it's going to be like, I'm not drawing land, sweet, but he might still draw a land because it's random.
And Robin, I mean, yeah, the card that's exiled by the Bomat Courier, which is ultimately the one that's going to get drawn, was never going to be impacted by what that top card was anyway.
Yeah. Put your pitchforks down, chat.
All right, and now we can resolve combat damage. Robin Dolar dropping to 4.
Yep.
Ragavan's going away. 1 card in hand for Loic Le Briand. We'll find out what that one is soon enough. Not too many of them that just sit in the hand for too long for this red deck.
Yeah, and it is a land, so it is the Torrential Gearhulk. But remember, this is sort of like who blinks first. But in a way, just because a couple of people asked in the chat, like he shouldn't block the Earthshaker Kenner because he can eternalize. But then Robin Dolar would be able to, in response, to animate it into a 4/4 zombie for himself, which would be bad for Loic. So obviously Loic is not going to do that. And on the other hand, Loic wants to keep up the scavenger grounds pretty long, because there is the threat of not only the Torrential Gearhulk, but if Robin here just decides to animate a creature from a graveyard, maybe even the Hazoret, he could. He only has 1 card. He could block with it. It's still just Loic can always respond with the scavenger grounds to prevent that. And remember, Karizev has menace, so he cannot be blocked by just the Scarab God. So it's a bit of a small side game that both the players are playing.
Yeah, and that's just the side game based on the cards that Robin Dolar can see and knows about, and the cards that Loic Le Briand can see that Robin Dolar knows about. There are 2 more cards in hand for Loic that make things a little bit more complicated for him, that in addition to all of the things that Loic has that Robin knows about, there's also cards in hand. An Arncrop Crasher. It's just been an absolute powerhouse in this game. We're going to have the Crasher making it so that the Scarab God not able to block, but there's still enough mana for that Scavenger Grounds to make sure that no other creatures come along that can block either.
Fair enough. And guys, thanks for correcting me. You're right that part of the cost to eternalize is exiling the creature from a graveyard. So Robin would have forced to do it earlier. But of course, there's also the way that Loic Le Briand, Robin could just let that resolve. And okay. So Loic Le Briand played the Crasher, and now Robin is getting the chance to play the Gearhulk, target the Grasp, and no, Loic Le Briand doesn't respond with the Scavenger Grounds.
Yeah, Scavenger Grounds, he would have to pay 2 and sacrifice it to exile all graveyards, but I think that may have been worth it in that exact circumstance.
Yeah, I would think so.
We don't know what the last card in his hand is, though.
Of course.
If it's something like an Abrade that could deal with that Torrential Gearhulk, then maybe he's got better options here.
I'm wondering what Loic Le Briand is cooking up here. I mean, if he had a removal spell like an Abrade for the Torrential Gearhulk, it would still be worth it to attack at least with the Karizev for that 1 point of damage, because it has menace. Oh, interesting. Alright, just a pass here. Is that an Abrade? I think it's a full art card, and I think... No, okay, it was a Glorybringer, that's why. Okay, it looked like an Abrade, so that also has a full art version. And that's a big guy with last card in Loic's hand being a fucking Regorger. Oh, but Robin Dolar drew an Essence Scatter the previous turn, which is perfect because he also can keep 4 mana open now. He can reanimate the
Zombie Glorybringers. And Loic Le Briand tapped out for his Scavenger Grounds. This is how Robin Dolar drew it up. If he was going to win, he maybe needed to get a little bit fortunate.
Nice. The Essence Scatter off the top. So important. Robin is very stoic. You can see his part of his face there, but he's still acting like, business as usual.
I mean, I think that if you're a blue-black control player, you kind of have to be used to and comfortable with going down to low life totals against aggro decks.
Yeah.
So Robin Dolar here. It's time to start giving some worshippers to the Scarab God.
Yeah, he has a good selection of stuff. There's also a Hazoret.
Yeah, I mean, he's got no cards in hand.
A nice indestructible creature. And remember, he can do it at the end of the turn, and then on his turn he can do something again. So, and he also can start using his ability in the upkeep, the trigger that would make Loic Librian lose 1 life for every zombie that he controls, and also scries that much. So it's there. I think Robin might actually even use the Scarab God in his upkeep as well, just to get a bigger. It's not a drain, but go for a bigger loss of life, as well as a more scry action.
And Robin, pretty carefully considering what he wants. You know, there's a dragon in there.
Yeah,
you got a zombie
dragon. Yeah, it is. This is Game of Thrones. Spoilers.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Sorry, Tim. I know you told me you're on, but yeah, sorry.
No spoilers in chat as well. It's not cool to spoil such things for people. All right, so we are seeing an activation in upkeep as well for the Scarab God. So it's going to be a drain for 2 by the time that Scarab God trigger resolves. Sorry, not a drain for 2. 2 points of life loss.
Yeah.
Scry 2. Liliana's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he wants something that he can play. I would think. Like, funnily enough, Robin Dolar is actually, I think, like basically 1 point away from winning. Like, but at least there's a blocker on Loyalist Librians.
Only one blocker though. Because
only one relevant blocker, yeah, because he can get rid of 2.
Yeah, it looks like Robin Dolar might think that he can do better than the 2 cards on the top of his deck. He's considering there's an island and a copy of Liliana the Last Hope in his scry.
Yeah. Robin should pick up the pace of his play. He did spend quite a bit of time in the last 2 turns, and if he wants to win the 3rd game, he should really pick it up. I think they're going to get a small time extension because of that judge call, if they ask for it, of course.
Yeah, just maybe a minute or 2 just to cover for the fact that they had to fix the situation with Bomat Courier.
Yeah, and if you're like wondering what is he thinking about, I mean, what's the point? He has no cards in hand. There is a point of keeping either of the cards on top of his library, either the Liliana or the island if he wants to play. But he can also dig for something that he can actually play, like a Grasp, or potentially maybe a Fatal Push, or another Essence Scatter, just to make sure that he's going to survive. He's on low life total, so he has to think very carefully about what he has here. Okay, let's go, Robin. I like him as a friend, but the slower he plays, the more I'm changing my mind.
You can go off people, you know, Robin. Loic Librian here, he's just chomping at the bit to get like the top card of his deck could end this game very, very easily.
Yeah, bottoms both, of course.
Draws for the turn.
Okay, it looks like he drew some relevant spell.
And now he's figuring out if there's going to be anything more. I mean, if there was the likes of a Fatal Push here, there it is.
Just like I drew it up. Okay.
Some exert here.
It's actually 18, because remember though, both animated creatures are 4 power. So Gearhawk's 5, Scarab God's 5, and that's 8. So Robin Dolar taking his time, but found the Fatal Push and swung for lethal. So, whew.
Hands back.
Game 3,
the 2
baby.
creatures that he's able to steal with the Scarab God.
Mulligan to 5 as well.
That's what
impressive.
You need.
And very, very impressive. All right.
So these players now, some relatively brisk sideboarding, I would imagine, because getting through the game in the last game in 15 minutes, very doable. But especially for Robin Dolar, whose deck typically won't have the sort of blowout 1-turn hits for a win. he's going to have to make sure that he's able to just allow enough time to close out this match.
Yeah, we got put through a very fun stat from Toby Henker, our text coverage writer, whose stuff you should check out on the Daily MTG website. So he told me that the champions of the past 5 European GPs are all in day 2 here. So that's Francesco Ugoni, Loic Lebrian, Lucas Blohon, Mattia Rizzi, and Corrado De Sio. And this was only broken, the streak was broken by Petr Sokurek, who was supposed to come but actually got ill a couple of days before the GP and had to change his mind, even though he had all the travel booked and the hotel and everything.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, it is rough. So we both know that he's a really good player, and so it's quite likely that he could have made it into day 2, because he was preparing quite a bit. And 6-3 is not that difficult if you have 3 buys, but it's still quite cool to see.
Very cool indeed. So yeah, wishing you well wherever you may be right now. Hopefully in your sickbed at home, getting rested up there. One of the top 10 players in Czechia, Petr Sokurek.
Yeah, I mean Petr's great, and I really enjoyed his Facebook post a few weeks ago where he just because he was bored, he created a list of top 10 Czech Magic players, and he got quite a bit of heat off of that. But he rated himself somewhat highly. But I would say
backed up by results at the moment, though.
Exactly, backed up by results, and that's the important thing. But he's still someone who's very talented, and yeah, definitely well respected among other pro players so far. And he already has some really good GP results to his name. I mean, he did win the GP in Barcelona, I believe. Was it Barcelona? I think so. Well, one of the GPs last year. Oh, yeah. And by the way, Chad, it's Czechia. It's not Czech Republic. Google says so it must be right. No, but in reality, it's now a running joke between me and Tim to call it Czechia rather than Czech Republic, because Czechia actually said so. The government made a decree that saying both Czechia and Czech Republic is correctly. As weird as it sounds in English, Czechia, it just sounds weird, but actually in the Czech language, it's much easier to say the Czech equivalent of the word Czechia rather than just say the full name. So that's why we tend to make fun of them. Especially us, because we're the Czech small brothers there in Slovakia, so we got to make fun of them whenever we can. That's what good brothers do.
All right, so these players drawing their opening hands soon enough.
Yeah, and let's see how many millions there's going to be in this game. But I feel with Robin on the draw is a little problematic, but we saw that he has the tools that are necessary to win this, because he has the Scarab God, which seemed really crucial. He has a bunch of removal. He has Flame Tendrils, has been so key in both games that he's played. Plus he has those Gifted Aetherborns. I see some removal already. Oh, double Sunken Hollow. I see a Fatal Push. Flame Tendrils as well.
I mean, this looks like it'll play. He's got
his Swamp. Okay, that's
a good set of lands.
Yep.
He's going to take just a point here off Village Messenger on the first turn. To be honest, not the scariest of 1-drops, even though it probably will be transforming this first turn.
Yeah, he now has decisions to do. Should he start off with a tapped Sunken Hollow, or should he go for the Swamp? He's gonna. He has to, because of how he's going to sequence the following turn. This is actually pretty important. He can play Fatal Push here, which is nice, but unless he draws a Swamp, he will not be able to play the Grasp of Darkness. So let's see what kind of hand Loic Lebrian puts together.
Ramming out Ruins into Bomat Courier there. Will there be another 1-drop? Swings for 4 here on the second turn, and yeah, there's the Fatal Push on the transformed Village Messenger. He just wanted Loic Lebrian to do a little bit of extra work, getting it out the sleeve, turning it over, and so on, before the Fatal Push ultimately ending that one.
Okay, Kalitas, another good card if he gets to the late game. And now here's the problem. Robin has double Sunken Hollow and an island, so that means now he won't be able to play a Grasp. On the other hand, though, playing it this way, it presents Robin with an opportunity to bluff Essence Scatter, or potentially something like Censor. It's a card we've seen. So Loic Lebrian will still be very careful about playing out his cards here. And he doesn't actually have anything, because he has Double Hazard and a Chandra.
Yeah, this one of those hands that takes some time to develop on the red side of the table. And Robin Dolar certainly will not mind about that. His mana now looking pretty great.
Got much better. And you know what I quite like about the blue-black control list over the blue-red control list is that blue-black can definitely sideboard out like Glimmer of Geniuses, which are very key for the blue-red deck. And because the blue-black control of Robin Dolar just has way more many haymakers that he can play rather than rely on drawing cards into Torrential Gearhulks, Kalitas, Scarab God, and whatnot. Those cards seem to be great. Look at that, Gifted Aetherborn here for Robin Dolar. But this might be good news for Loic Le Bruyant. He can possibly develop a Chandra. I would guess he's going to minus to kill the Gifted Aetherborn.
Yeah, get that lifelinker off the table good and quick.
Boom.
One loyalty, not actually that dangerous against the blue-black control deck. Gets another hit in with the courier.
Another Sunken Hollow. Or is it a Swamp? No, it's a Swamp. He had the Sunken Hollow. So, again, tough decision. He can play Kalitas. He also has the Never to Return to kill the Chandra. So, there are decisions to be made here. It can feel better to play the Kalitas because afterwards, Robin can play a turn where he plays Never to Return on the Chandra and the Grasp of Darkness on the Bomat Courier, which would also give him a zombie from the Kalitas. So he's priced into playing Kalitas early here, but he just has to hope that Loic Le Bruyant doesn't have something to deal with it right away.
Loic's hand, I mean, at this point, anytime you see a red deck that takes a turn off entirely, so on turn 3, Loic Le Bruyant didn't have anything going, that immediately raises questions on the other side of the table as to what are they holding. Your best case scenario is they're holding a ton of land. That's probably not realistic if they kept their hand. So suddenly it's like, okay, they're going to have some key 4 drops or 5 drops.
Ooh, but look at this. What a draw from Robin Dolar. He pluses Chandra to get 2 mana, plays Hazard, and he has drawn an on-crop Crasher that he can play now on that Kalitas. So that means that he's coming in for 9 here.
Yeah, that will not be an amount of damage that was... I mean, that's basically pretty much the top output that Loic Le Bruyant could have presented in that turn. Robin Dolar now at 6 and has a lot to think about in terms of where he's going to go from here. He really needs to have the lifelink from Kalitas online, which is a little bit frustrating in a way because that may mean that he has to attack with Kalitas in order to gain life, as opposed to just using it as a blocker and hoping that it can actually be a blocker and gain life that way.
Yeah, the thing is he's still probably going to be fine because he's going to Grasp of Darkness the Hazaret. That's going to give him a zombie token. And now he has the option of actually attacking the Chandra. He doesn't have to spend the Never to Return on it. Even though I think he's going to Never to Return on the Bomat Courier just because it has so many cards underneath. Yeah, he goes for it because he gets another zombie off of it. And now he can attack the Chandra, gain 3 life. So Haymaker City from both sides. And remember, the Uncrop Crasher was exerted. That means that Loic Le Bruyant will not be able to use it right away. And look at that. From a full board to an empty board, Robin Dolar back up to 9, has a nice board of creatures, and he also has a Torrential Gearhulk still in his hand.
Now, one of the options available to Robin Dolar in subsequent turns here is to eat some zombies with Kalitas, increasing the size of Kalitas, increasing the potential life gain from its attacks. Is that something that you'd be tempted to do in this matchup?
I would be tempted to do it, yes. Very much so. Because the problem, the mono red deck doesn't really have a good way of dealing with a big creature, except making it unable to block. So if Robin Dolar would decide to, for example, just sacrifice both his zombies to make it into 7 power lifelinker, I just don't think Loic has anything to deal with it permanently. He could swing back for a loss of damage with a Hazaret. And he can also, of course, block it with the Hazaret, but it's still just a huge problem. And we know that Robin has a bunch of stuff going on as well left in his hand. He has a Torrential Gearhulk. So now we've actually, if now Loic taps out for the Hazaret and taps out, doesn't have a Scavenger Grounds available, I think Robin will just untap into a Torrential Gearhulk and just grasp the Hazaret, and I think that would be a point of no return, and Robin would get over the hill, as you say.
All right, of course, just the one card left in Robin Dolar's hand, and we know that that is the Torrential Gear Hulk, so he would need an untapped land in order to be able to do that.
No, he has a untapped land.
Oh,
as well.
I apologize. Sorry, I thought
he played a Choked Estuary and revealed the swamp, so we know he has a Swamp Torrential Gear Hulk in his hand. It was a chump block. Robin Dolar protecting his life total, but he should definitely... Okay, he drew another Choked Estuary. It might as well he can play. His opponent does know that there's a swamp in his hand. I think we're going to see the Torrential Gear Hulk.
So Loic Le Brion here, after having had a banner turn just a couple of turns ago, it looks like the corner might be turning here, and Robin Dolar might be able to once again battle back from low life and find the way of making it work.
Yeah, indeed. I'm thinking if there's any card. One card that would have been really good one of the previous turns was the Glorybringer, because that could have killed the Kalitas and would have changed the case significantly. Robin just checking life totals. I think he made a mistake when he marked it down. But yeah, Loic should be down to 16. Yeah, he's back up to 12. And there's the main phase. Torrential Gear Hulk to kill the Hazoret, get another zombie token. And now his defenses are firmly set. And now I don't think even the Glorybringer could save the day.
And at least Glorybringer, like right now, shields are down on Kalitas.
Yes.
4 toughness is an achievable number. After even one zombie gets eaten, that becomes a lot tougher. Falconwrath Gorger,
it's not a Glorybringer.
Not the droid he was looking for.
Yeah, I mean Glorybringer would have been still fine, but if you exert, you don't get to attack in 3 consecutive turns, so the clock wouldn't be quite as fast for Le Brion. Just more swamps for Robin, but he now has so many options. He can make the Kalitas really big if he wants to. He also has a 5/6 Torrential Gear Hulk. That's just impressive on its own on this board.
Robin having a little bit of a think, because I guess that there is still potential that if he fully went all in here, that there could be a little surprise on the swing back.
He's just going to swing at everything.
Worth at least considering before you jam everyone into the red zone.
Yep. Or not.
I mean, this is the consideration phase, right?
Yeah. 3 minutes left on the clock. Robin's like, I got days to make a decision here.
Yeah, treating the clock as a resource in the same way that some people treat life totals as a resource. It's like,
indeed.
It's the last minute's the only one that counts, right?
Yeah,
all right, here they come.
Through everything. Yeah, and then no blocks. All right, in that case, yep, sack it. Just take 12. I'll gain 7. Who's the aggro deck now?
Well, I mean, there's a lot that would say at this point, it's not Loic Le Brion.
Yeah, I mean, this is game over. 19-4. This is the point where blue control feels comfortable. Yeah, there's nothing.
And there's the scoop and the handshake.
Wow.
Robin Dolar making use of every part of the buffalo there. It took a little bit of time. It took a lot of cards, some of which from Loic Le Brion's graveyard, but able to pick up the 2-1 victory. He advances to 9-1 here at GP Turin. Great games there. Lovely stuff. We will have more Magic for you soon enough, but first, these messages.